On January 12th, Saturn had its only conjunction with Pluto at 22 degrees Capricorn. It was also joined by Mercury, Ceres, and the Sun. This Capricorn conjunction formed a square to dwarf planet Eris at 23 degrees Aries. Eris has been in Aries for many years, but now that the planets conjuncting Capricorn are squaring to it, things are happening. Being realistic is vital. Embracing reality is vital. It doesn't mean you like reality. It means you acknowledge it for what it is. In doing so, you are in the best position to work with reality. People need to have realistic expectations, and that also means not buying into hysteria and emotional manipulation. It doesn't mean just running with an overblown computer model study or imagining what could be without looking at what is. In part 1, I spoke about the virus being a chaos element. In mythology, chaos was the void state predating the creation of the universe, before the primordial deities even. From chaos came Erebus and Nyx, darkness and night. And born from darkness and night came Eris, the personification of strife and discord. Eris was responsible for the Trojan War. Eris is very slow moving, taking 558 years to complete one pass through the zodiac. The energies this dwarf planet represents sit in the background waiting to be unleashed. When a faster moving planet comes into aspect with Eris, strife and discord are unleashed. Usually, with faster moving planets, it is more minor events and issues. Pluto has been square to Eris the past year and a half, and was exactly square this winter 2020. With Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, and Pallas all conjunct in late Capricorn, they all added to bring out this Eris energy. Eris isn't bad. It is a part of life. Strife and discord are a part of life, and forced changes. Eris is not the virus directly. The virus is part of the chaos of nature. But Eris and others can show us when the chaos can be unleashed, through triggers by other planets, as I described. I think all of the Kuiper Belt objects are about transformation and societal change. The dwarf planets at least, Eris, Pluto, Makemake, and Haumea, they all spend hundreds of years moving around the sun, and in turn represent changes in society at those larger time intervals. A quick thing to address when talking about the goddess Eris is the masculine and feminine aspects in astrology aren't as important as people make them out to be. Since we are talking about archetypes and grouping behavior, the important part is what something represents. The masculine and feminine in astrology is just another way to categorize different signs, planets, etc., to differentiate them. Neither is good or bad, or better than the other in astrology. It is like saying left or right when giving direction. It is useful information based on what those words represent. On January 21st, 2020, the first case of the coronavirus was announced in the United States. Mars was crossing the United States ascendant that day. This brought our country into this, and it became our identity and affected our health. All first house matters. 2 days prior, Hygeia stationed direct in the US 6th house, and by the 21st had started moving direct again. Jumping ahead a little bit, we see a lot of Mars action. It shows us why March felt so intense. Not only the virus, but the strain from all the tension of Mars moving to conjunct multiple planets in Capricorn, all while squaring Eris and Aries. As we move into April, I think some of the tension, frustrations, and the, quote, heat from all of this will start to calm down. Mars will be moving away from Saturn and further into Aquarius, taking itself out of the planetary energies involved in the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. It will move through Aquarius and Pisces through early summer, and then move into Aries to come back into play again. This will happen in August of 2020 as Mars moves through the sign of Aries to conjoin Eris while squaring the Capricorn planets. August might feel like March again. It will be heavier times. In August, Mars will square each of the Capricorn planets before going retrograde in early September and then moving backwards to square those same planets and conjunct Eris. There's a cruel humor in the universe and how it operates. The fact that Mars happens to retrograde across the exact degrees of Aries squared to the Capricorn conjunction earlier this year, it could have been a little later and in the sign of Taurus. But no, the universe wants us to learn and grow and struggle and evolve this year. On March 10th, Mars moved into the U.S. second house, and 3 days later, President Donald Trump declared a national emergency around the virus. On March 17th, Mars moved to conjunct Pallas. Trump invokes the National Defense Production Act. Companies start shifting their production lines for needed medical supplies. Distilleries start making hand sanitizer. Other companies like the clothing company Hanes are producing masks. The president's 15 days to slow the spread encouraged only essential workers to be out and about. Our essential infrastructure is highlighted strongly. This is something very positive coming from the Jupiter-Pallas conjunction in Capricorn with Pluto. These are the people who make the system work, our society, on a fundamental level. Jupiter in Capricorn is teaching people this. On March 20th, Mars moves to conjunct Jupiter. On March 22nd, the planet Saturn moved into the sign of Aquarius. With Mars moving to conjunct Pluto on the 23rd of March, we see a lot of emphasis on power in the government. On the 27th, Mars was conjunct the U.S. natal Pluto, and Trump signed the Crisis Relief Bill, passed by Congress just that day, and the Senate 2 days prior. On the 28th, Pallas was conjunct Jupiter, and we saw breakthroughs begin with the hydroxychloroquine treatments for the virus. This continued over the weekend with Pallas, Jupiter, and Pluto conjunct. Around the same time, a new rapid test was approved for testing the virus. This test is apparently easier for all involved and a lot faster. By the time Mars had moved into Aquarius to conjoin Saturn there, new ideas about the models surrounding the potential death and infection rate of the virus were adjusted and brought a lot lower. Mars moved into Aquarius on the 30th of March, and on March 31st, Mars conjunct Saturn, and Pallas conjunct Pluto. Many issues have come up with our medical system, and we are seeing the negatives of Capricorn come out here. People have to remember that hospitals are businesses, and for better or for worse, are run like them. People who work in the executive side of the hospitals have been implementing lean process improvement and just-in-time inventory management the past few years. This usually only provides 1 to 2 weeks of inventory supply to make things look better on the balance sheet. It works great on paper. There is always a cost, working conditions, etc. This underscores the fundamental issue that is coming up right now with Pluto and Capricorn and other planets there as well. Profit above all else. It is fine when in balance with other things, but when run rampant, it causes major societal disruptions and suffering. Pluto and Capricorn can give power to big corporations, and we can see this with companies like Walmart and Amazon hiring new workers and increasing sales during the virus crisis, while most others are not working. With everything in Capricorn, we need to embrace reality for what it is. There is a lot of fear and confusion around the virus, and this confusion and fear was at a peak during the month of March, while the Sun was in Pisces, as well as Mercury retrograding through Pisces. Neptune is also in the sign of Pisces as well, adding to the confusion. The month of March was exceptionally hard with all of the other transits happening. Looking ahead, I think by mid to late April, things will start to calm down quite a bit. Venus and Hygeia will be conjunct on April 14th in the US 6th house, while also trine to Mars. And Mars will be moving far away from Saturn, which has been restricting its energy and drive. In her book, Astrology, a Cosmic Science, by Isabel Hickey, she writes about the relationship between Mars and Saturn. She writes, Saturn is the law of limitation. Until power is limited and focus, it cannot be used. Saturn says, so far shall you go and go no further. In any aspect between Mars and Saturn, wisdom says, follow Saturn, ignore Mars. Mars in the area in which Mars is placed looks most attractive. Who wants discipline and the confining of energy? The trick is to use the right amount of Martian energy by confining it within the bounds of Saturn. The best interest of the individual is served by following Saturn. I just find that to be interesting that Mars and Saturn are conjunct right now. That basically describes everyone staying at home and not being able to move about how they normally would. The confinement of our energy and our drive and our movement. I believe the peak infections will be around mid to late April as well. And then the next few months will be about adjusting to the changes made and adjusting back to what it is that we want as a country. The focus will be on the economy and even more so politics. The election is still happening in November. Things will start to heat up again starting in late July and early August as Mars squares the Capricorn planets and turns retrograde through November 13th, 10 days after the election. On April 2nd, the Moon will conjunct the U.S. Mercury. On April 3rd, the Sun will oppose the U.S. Saturn. On April 4th, Jupiter will conjunct Pluto. On April 7th, there is a full moon that is square to the January eclipse. On April 13th, the Sun will conjunct Eris, and then the Sun will square the Capricorn planets. Finally, on April 25th, Pluto goes retrograde. Starting in late April and into May, it's retrograde season. We will see Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter, Pallas, and also Venus all go retrograde between April 25th and June 18th. These planets, besides Venus, will move backwards together in tight proximity through Capricorn. During the retrograde season, it will be a good time for us as a country to look at where we failed in response to this virus and to fix and implement the things that need to be better. On June 21st, we have a solar eclipse. June 30th, Jupiter retrograde will conjunct Pluto retrograde. On July 1st, Saturn retrogrades back into Capricorn. On July 5th, there's a full moon conjunct the United United States sun. On July 29th, Mars will square Pallas. This is when Mars starts to square all of the Capricorn planets, and when I think things will start to heat back up again. On August 4th, Mars will square Jupiter. On August 13th, Mars will square Pluto. On August 24th, Mars will square Saturn, and then come September 9th, Mars will pause and turn retrograde. Right after this, on September 12th, Jupiter will turn direct, and on September 29th, Saturn will turn direct. On October 4th, Mars retrograde will conjunct Eris, and on October 19th, Pluto goes direct. November 3rd is election day. November 12th, Pallas, Jupiter, and Pluto are all exactly conjunct, and November 13th, Mars goes direct. In December, we see the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at 0 degrees Aquarius on December 21st. On December 22nd, Mars will conjunct Eris, and then on the 23rd, Mars will square Pluto. In the chart of America, 2 points we have are Mercury opposed Pluto. Mercury represents collective conscious of the American people. Opposing Pluto shows our potential for manipulation and to be controlled. Mercury in our chart also represents the media, and this includes any forms of media, television, news, online. Opposing Pluto shows the potential for forms of media to manipulate. This can be due to just simply money, but it can also be for more nefarious reasons. The Mercury-Pluto opposition in the US chart also shows how people speak to the American people, and this can include politicians as well. This aspect gives a desire for intellectual control, as well as shows obsession. Money in media comes from holding a person's attention on your programming. TV shows, news media, documentaries, online media, advertising, political speeches, celebrities, they all attempt to hold the American people's attention. And due to our attention, our Mercury being in the sign of Cancer, this can be done through appeals to emotion, through fear, pandering, quote, sob stories, being relatable, as well as feel-good stories, and media that shows us what makes us feel safe and secure. The news is excellent at milking a tragedy. With all of the planets transiting the US natal Mercury and US natal Pluto, there will be great changes to the media and how people perceive it. Our values around communication and our collective conscious are changing. How we communicate and how we perceive our environment around us. We as a country need to be careful about civil unrest in the coming year. People can only put up with things for so long. When Mars moves to conjunct Eris and square the other Capricorn planets, and then moves retrograde this fall, people will be angry. Frustration with the system will come out, and frustration with the failures of the system. Have we done irreversible damage to the structure and stability of our country and the world? I personally don't think so. I think we'll get through this, but things are definitely being tested and changing. Something else that has come up and out in the American people in the past few years is moral fascism and people telling others what to do and how to be, controlling them, the authority, police state, etc. Fear leads to people clinging to authority. When people are scared, they will cling on to any bits of knowledge and look to authority. Authoritarian attitudes of all kinds are strong during this time, not just for the government. These attitudes have come out in the past few years, like I said, due to Pluto and Capricorn, and they have blown up this past year due to the other planets there now. Saturn is just moving into Aquarius. In Aquarius, social control will come from the group itself, whereas in Capricorn, it comes from authority. This is something to be wary of for the future when Pluto moves into Aquarius in 5 years. Saturn being there for 2 years now might give us a preview of some of the issues that will come up. This is a video put out by the New York Police Department of their drone footage patrolling for people gathering during the virus crisis. The technology involved and the level at which one can be controlled and surveilled is impressive. We as a country need to think about, is this the kind of future that we want? During a crisis, civil liberties are usually strained in the name of security, and this can be good, but the issues come up when these new powers of authority by the government stick around and become the new normal. It is a trade-off between security theater and real security. With all of this happening in America's second house, our values are being transformed and tested. We have seen the past few years a growing debate about what we as a country value, who we value, etc. And our values as a country in written form are the Constitution. We can see people arguing over the values of certain amendments, as well as certain liberties being taken. This constitutional crisis is necessary for our country, and it is a deep one. It won't be resolved in the next few years. This will take the next decade. I do not think there will be a great recession or anything in the next few years. There will be financial issues and strains in the system and changes that will happen in what we value and where money is spent. But the financial system in America will not fall apart. Many astrologers have disagreed on this with me. We'll see. Things will be financially rocky for a few years as our culture adjusts to the changes happening this year, but the financial system will be propped up somehow. Something will happen. The dollar will remain the global currency for at least the next decade. Cryptocurrency will remain, but I don't think it will become the global currency. Summer and moving into fall, politics will become the main focus again in the United States. Even the virus is political, so it never went away. Trump will be reelected in November, and the build-up to the election will be very heated because Mars will be retrograde. By this December, things will really start to calm down, and then the following winter, 2021, as Jupiter and Saturn move away from the conjunction with Pluto, things will start to get better. It will be less a time of fear and destruction, and more a time of ideas and rebuilding. Briefly, I'll touch on China and how the Saturn-Pluto conjunction is affecting their chart. All the Capricorn planets are in China's 12th house. The 12th house is about many things, but one thing it is about is lies and deception and hidden enemies, secrets and sabotage, and endings. With everything happening in China's 12th house, we will see how things unfold. I personally think the Chinese government is not being fully honest about the virus, and this would make sense with the transits. Their nation will go through a lot of transformations in the next 5 years as these major planets move through their 12th house to cross their ascendant. The United States and its complex governmental, financial, and infrastructure system are all being challenged and transformed right now. I truly believe, based on the astrology, that things will get better. 2020 will be the hardest year, and as we move into 2021 and beyond, things will start to ease up. In the shorter term, the next few months will ease up a little bit until August, dying back down again by December. A person cannot predict the future with perfect accuracy, but the archetype of a sign or planet has to express itself. So Pluto in Capricorn, for example, must express itself in line with the archetypes involved. How they express themselves is dependent on many factors, but I do think the shadow qualities of a given archetype is the path of least resistance for the expression. Without any influence, choice, action, etc. by human beings or nature, we can choose to manipulate how these energies express themselves. They have to express themselves, but we can control how. An interesting side point, Dr. Deborah Birx of the Coronavirus Task Force has the asteroid Hygeia and her Mars conjunct at 23 degrees Capricorn. She was pulled into this, with all the planets in Capricorn conjunct her Mars and Hygeia. You can see the influence of the transits of Jupiter to her Mars and Pluto to her Mars in the speeches she gives, and it cracks me up. She is teaching the American people about health, and she does a very good job at it. Her Mars and Capricorn give her a strong sense of realism and pragmatism.
I'm going to say something that's a little bit complicated, but I'm going to try to do it in a way that we can all understand it together.
Dr. Birx is a good example of how an individual's chart can show how they are pulled into the larger cultural picture and process in astrology. The same type of analysis can be done with a presidential race, for example. In the virus's case, one doesn't know ahead of time it was coming and couldn't specifically tell Dr. Birx she will become so involved, but one could have looked at her chart and seen all the planets transiting in Capricorn to her Mars-Hygeia conjunction and said something was going to happen when those planets hit her Mars. The virus broke just before they crossed her Mars, and by the time they did cross 23 degrees Capricorn, she was a part of the task force and the daily briefings, her and Dr. Fauci becoming the experts to America during this crisis, and a symbol of authority. This is how astrology works. Cannot predict specifics always, but you can see the timing of important times for an individual or nation. I really think everything will be okay. This isn't the end. This isn't some apocalypse. This isn't some doom and gloom situation. Astrology shows us how the transits come and go, and things are good and things are bad. People have talked about the end of times for years, and it never has happened, and this isn't it either. It will all be okay. I'm going to leave you with a clip from a podcast that I liked. Thanks for listening, and take care.
So, evening, guys. Hope you're well. How do you think society and politics will change following the pandemic's decline? Let me just say, I hope that this will change us absolutely radically. And my fondest hope would be that this wakes us up to all sorts of things, and that as bad as this was, it will actually leave us ahead in the end, because we've had a trial run at something that could have been far worse and unfolded far faster. So anyway, there's no guarantee that things will not get vastly worse as a result of political bumbling and the unexpected, but nonetheless, it is possible we come out of this ahead because we will have learned a valuable lesson.
Yeah, we can hope. We sort of see governments across the world reverting to the mean. Hungary's going authoritarian, for instance, so that is not hopeful. But we can hope that it will do the opposite.